today's bullet journal plan with me video, we are going back to basics and creating some simple, wintry, beginner-friendly spreads for January. And I'll be sharing 5 bullet journal tips for those who are just starting out. Hello everyone, I am Lynette Clark. Welcome back, or if you are new here, welcome to the channel. So it's almost New Year, which means some of you may have made a resolution to start bullet journaling for the first time. With that in mind, I wanted to create some easy beginner-friendly spreads in this video, in addition to my usual style of plan with me videos, where I tend to go a bit more wild creatively speaking. So without further ado, let's get started on the cover page, and I will go over my first tip, which is materials. I am keeping my materials to a minimum because if you're starting out, chances are you aren't going to have a lot of supplies, and nor do you actually need them to make beautiful and functional Bujo spreads. In today's video, I am using a pencil and an eraser to sketch out my spreads initially, fine liners and some colour pens, which are Crayola Supertips, which are really affordable and great pens. I think you can get them anywhere. I got mine in my local supermarket, and some Koi brush marker pens. And last but no means least, one of the most important factors, a notebook. The one I am using is from Archer & Olive, and it is a dotted notebook and it's a size A5. However, you do not need an expensive notebook at all. Admittingly, they are all lovely, wonderful things, but they are not necessary for you to have, and if you don't have them or can't afford them, don't let that hold you back from bullet journaling. So for my cover page, I've added the title of January in my own handwritten font, and then just to make it look a little bit more fancy, I'm going to do some faux calligraphy, which is basically where you add extra lines on the downward stroke of each letter. You can then choose to colour it in or fill it in completely in black, whatever you prefer. So going back to notebooks, I personally prefer a dotted notebook because it helps you with lines and all of that. But if you only have a plain or lined notebook or even a grid notebook, this is perfectly fine and works just as well. If you figure out the bullet journaling system, any notebook will do. And as much as I don't want to admit this to myself, the same goes for fancy pens. You don't need all the fancy stationery that you see all the time on Instagram or on Facebook. You just need a pen or a biro, whatever you have laying around in that junk drawer at home. Once you get the hang of bullet journaling and that you find out it is something that you find useful to you, then maybe consider upgrading your supplies. As I've already mentioned, I'm using an Archer & Olive notebook. I prefer these because they have thick paper, which is a must for me as I love to use a lot of watercolour paint in my spreads. And the thick paper means that the paint doesn't buckle the paper too much, and I don't get any bleed through on any of the pages. Plus the pages lay flat, so when you are drawing or painting, you don't get any of that weird bump in the middle of your notebook when you are trying to use it. All that spring coil in the centre, making it uncomfortable for you to draw. So for the cover page we have a title, and now to make it a little prettier. As you can see, my theme for this video is snowflakes and snow. I thought it was just very wintry and would go really well with the seasons. I know for some of you it doesn't snow, and we very rarely get it here on the Isle of Wight. But for me, when I think of winter, I also think of snow. Plus these little snowflake doodles are really fun and easy to recreate. Plus I just think it looks really magical and makes me want to wrap up in a warm blanket and put my cosy socks on and have a hot chocolate in front of the fire. So I've drawn a few basic shapes out in pencil first, and then I'm going over with a fine liner, and then with a coloured pen, just sort of going over in sketchy lines just to give it a hint of colour, and then basically adding lots of different various shapes and patterns of snowflakes all over the page. So my second tip for bullet journaling for beginners is to keep it simple, at least at the beginning anyway. Once you start getting the hang of everything and how the whole system and how everything works, then you can start adding all the pretty and fancy stuff. When you start, it can feel quite overwhelming, especially when you see all these beautiful and creative spreads on YouTube and Instagram, and it's easy to forget that the whole point of the system is to personalise your organisation and productivity. The creativity for me personally is one of my favourite aspects of bullet journaling, but it's not the only aspect, and definitely not the most important thing when it comes to bullet journaling. Because the whole thing is about arming yourself with a system to help you be more organised and productive and make your life a lot easier and not more complicated. So next up is my calendar page. I personally like to have a big calendar to refer to each month, but if you prefer something smaller, that's fine. It's all down to personal preference. But for me, this just works for me at the moment. So I'm just working out the grid for the calendar first, and I'm working from the centre as I'd like it to be symmetrical to the double page spread. And I'm using pencil first before I draw it out in pen. In case you're interested, each box is 5 dots by 5, and I have 2 dots by 5 for the title of each week at the top of the calendar. And then once I've drawn this all out, I'm going to add some drop shadow in blue just to make it look a little bit more pretty, and to keep it in with the snowflake theme, I'm also going to draw lots of snowflakes. So my tip number 3 is something you guys are probably already doing, and that's finding inspiration. I do this all the time, especially on Instagram and Pinterest and bullet journaling groups on Facebook. There are literally endless amounts of stunning, beautiful bullet journal accounts and groups out there. They are a fantastic source of information to get the creative juices flowing. And sorry for the self-plug here, but I have an Instagram account. If you want to check it out, it's Lynette_S_Clark, where I regularly share bullet journal spreads and also my art. Another thing I find helpful, especially for finding themes for monthly spreads, is thinking about things that are relevant to each month. It can be something obvious, like obviously Halloween would be spooky stuff, to something that's not quite so obvious. So for my actual bullet journal theme this month, I am doing a Raven theme because the poem was originally published in January 1845, and after all the cute stuff that you do around Christmas, I have been itching to do something a little bit more me, and so I picked a theme that was dark and gothic. If you're a little bit confused as to why I'm working on a January spread right now and talking about doing another one, it's because I wanted to do a beginner-friendly one in my old notebook on the pages that I had left, and then I am doing the Raven one that I've just spoken about in my new journal for 2022. I'm currently working on that one right now, so hopefully the video for that will be out before January the 1st, if not the weekend. So with the cover and calendar page done, I am now doing a very simple mood and habit tracker spreads. If you've watched any other of my videos, I tend to do something a little bit more elaborate, especially for my mood trackers. But because I want to keep this nice and simple for anyone who's starting out, I went back to these box standard layouts, which I have done vertically. So the mood tracker is just going to be a standard line graph, and then for the habit trackers, I am going to put the habits that I would like to track at the top. And so for my 4th beginner bullet journaling tip, do not be afraid to mix up and try new spread layouts every once in a while. It is very easy for bullet journaling to become mundane, boring, or even repetitive, because if you do the exact same thing every week or month, of course it's going to get boring, so don't be afraid to change it up. As the saying goes, variety is the spice of life. I always change things, especially from an aesthetic standpoint every month, but I also change out the actual layouts of my spreads and the way I organise my week or month. That's because as I go along and use my bullet journal, I figure out what I am looking for in my bullet journal and what works for me. So by all means, try out a layout. If it doesn't work for you, then change it up the next month or week. You do not need to get stuck in the rut of doing the same things. It's supposed to evolve with you and your lifestyle and your needs. So for my next layout is a quote page. What is a bullet journal without a good quote page? Seeing as this theme is about snowflakes, I needed to find a quote about snowflakes, and I found this one that says, "We are like a snowflake, all different in our own beautiful way." What I like about a good quote page is you get to mess around with different lettering styles and practice your typography skills. And from that, you can also see what are your strengths and your weaknesses and what you might need to practice further. And so for my last beginner tip, number 5, consistency. Or should I say, how to remain consistent with your bullet journal and keep it active. Now I know this is only my opinion, but I would recommend not doing your spreads too far in advance. But again, I know this is all down to personal preference. It's easy to get really inspired when you first start out and want to create spreads months ahead because you are so full of ideas. And just going back to the monthly spreads for a second, So the quote page is done, and now on to the next, which is a line a day spread that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically a tool that you use to write something each day that you've either achieved or you've read, seen, done, or something that you want to remember. It's just a nice little record of the month. Then over on the other page, I've done a monthly goals, and the first 2 awkward days, which consists of the first week of January, and now I'm going on to do my weekly spread, my first full weekly spread. So going back to tip number 5, I find that if you set things up too far in advance, there is no motivation for me personally to even partake in the system anymore. Plus, if you set up your spreads too far in advance, you are kind of cutting yourself off from the whole best part of the bullet journaling system, which is that you can just flip a page and do whatever you want on it. It doesn't have to be a weekly spread. Sometimes it can be a journal entry or some doodles or a painting, shopping list. But then all I have to do for the next week is just turn the page and do my next weekly spread and keep going. So if you do plan too far ahead, it doesn't leave any room for flexibility or for all of those random personalised entries and lists that you might want to do. So I personally set my monthly spreads at the start of the month, which you guys see on my videos, and then at the beginning of each week, that's when I set up my weekly spread for that next week. I just wanted to add as well, I see a lot of people beating themselves up if they miss a week or they miss a month or whatever. Sometimes life gets in the way, and that is just a fact of life. But the fact of the matter is you can pick this up and carry on as and when you feel the need to. It's your bullet journal and your tool, and it's there for you for when you need it to make your life easier and more organised. So I hope you've thought that these tips were helpful. Let me know if you think I've forgotten anything, or if you are already a seasoned bullet journaler watching this video, if there's any tips that you could give to people who are just starting out. I'd be interested to know who is watching this that has been bullet journaling for a while, or who of you that are just starting. Let me know in the comments section below. As I said, I have another video, my actual plan with me video, coming up over the next few days, so keep a lookout for that. If you liked the video and thought it was helpful, then please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, then please subscribe to the channel and help this little channel grow. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.